Good evening, and welcome to the Hero's Breath podcast. I am your lovely host, Matthew Huddle.
And this is Tom Jaczynski, and just FYI, it is not evening yet. It's only 1:30 in the afternoon.
That's just the way it's been, and it's the way it's always going to go. This is episode 9. Yep. Today we are talking about woman as Temptress, and as Tom said, this is actually an afternoon. This is December 25th in the year of our Lord 2018. It is Christmas, and we're catching up.
This is brought to you by the Phi Center. Primary holistic integrative center, where we pretty much specialize in doing neurofeedback and a variety of other fun biohacking stuff. Also have an acupuncturist on hand, physical therapist, occupational therapist, so we're a very well-rounded group of
biohackers.
Yeah, we're just here to make you the best you that you can be, right?
And the website, of course, is phicenter.nyc. We also want to now shout out James Morano. That's jamesmorano.com. He is now editing our podcast for us, so you want to make sure you check him out. He does more than audio, of course. He does audio, visual, photography, drone footage, pretty much all the AV stuff that you could need. He's got a really good portfolio, so make sure you go check him out, jamesmorano.com. He will definitely impress you. So we want to say thank you, of course, to James for agreeing to take us slackers on. All right, I know I said this about the last one, but this is easily the most misunderstood segment of the hero's journey. No, it really is. And, again, if you go on YouTube and you're looking up information about the hero's journey, the monomyth, some publishers out there, not that I'm knocking them, but they will try to either gloss over this or change the name or smush it into others. Woman as Temptress is, again, just a label because it's conveying the idea that what you are now dealing with in this stage are the malevolent forces of nature. In the last episode, we talked about the benevolent forces of nature as being represented by the female, the divine feminine especially. Now we're dealing with the malevolent forces of nature. And because yin, everything yin, isn't as blatant and forceful and overt as the male, as the yang, what you're talking about in this stage is not something as obvious as like a dragon, but something more insidious, something that can screw the hero up, can take him off his path, can end him, really. A lot of heroes have fallen to the woman as tempter stage. I mean, typically it's represented in stories like a sexual encounter, but it's not just that. It could also be a physical gratification of any kind. Jesus' temptation on the mountain, in his 40 days in the wilderness there, he was tempted to use his powers for his own selfish ends to satisfy his hunger, which of course would have taken him out of ketosis, and that would have been just terrible right there. So it's about that physical. It's about the yin insidiously, gently leading the hero off his path. Two of the cinematic form representations of this, I think, that are really, really good to understand that it's not just woman as Temptress, is in Avatar and The Goonies. In Avatar, Jake Sully had just become a full-fledged member of the Omaticaya tribe, and then Colonel Quaritch, the base security commander, who he had been feeding information to reluctantly, said that, we could pull you out of this whole stupid operation. You can go back home. I've arranged to have your spine fixed. Originally, he went to Pandora so he could make the money to have his spine fixed, and now he could keep his pay and have his spine fixed as Colonel Quaritch pulled some strings for him. He had every logical, rational reason to leave, but he was committed. He was connected more to the planet, more to Pandora, more to the benevolent side of nature.
The yang is very often, the masculine. The masculine is very often very rational,
right,
and logical.
It's playing on that side.
Yeah. And so in that example, right, you see Jake basically embodying like a full transformation, like fully becoming human. In that,
ironically.
Right. In the sense that it was a completion of the feminine and the masculine within him. Now he was tapping into that feminine.
Right. He wasn't all living up here. He was living in here for once. Yeah. And ironically, on another planet. In another alien body. It really touches into the realm of psychedelics. It's ironic because he's the serious biohacker, and that's where those fields kind of converge. A lot of biohackers get into psychedelics. I'm personally not one to explore psychedelics because it's just not my thing.
But not even just for that purpose, right? Yeah. But like I've done so much reading looking into these things, not just for their spiritual applications, but there is a lot of research that shows that people with depression
Oh, yeah.
or PTSD, right? Like
Right.
various substances, whether it's MDMA or psilocybin, like you can really help almost reset the psyche.
And that's essentially what Jake goes through.
Yes.
And a lot of people, and I've done some reading too. Daniel Pinchbeck has put out a bunch of books and articles and about this. I would highly recommend checking out some of his material. A lot of people report not just seeing, quote, aliens or these spirits in this other realm that you're tripping into, but as far as being these otherworldly spirits themselves, leaving your body. As you said, it's a reset because it gets you out of your head, which is stuff like flotation therapy or like, other kinds of deep meditation. They really bring you out of yourself.
On the topic of meditation, just because you know that I love this stuff.
I know you do, baby.
There's areas of the brain in your parietal, temporal region, the default mode network that's located right there on the back is where basically the self is created. It's a self-referencing part of the brain. And so it sees things in relation to the self. The parietal and temporal, that's more spatial. By bringing activity down in those areas through meditative practices, you're actually making those boundaries, those spatial boundaries, those temporal boundaries more diffuse. You're not as closed off to the other, whether it's the individual, the planet. Those boundaries become far more diffuse, and so there's this greater sense of oneness. Just by limiting activity in those areas.
Like I said, the reason I don't get into psychedelics is because it's so abrupt, and I'm actually managed to do it, ironically, with my brain, to have some of those very same experiences that people report with psychedelics on my own, using like deep meditation and music all
and I'll tell you
oftentimes
something else. Andrew Weil, he's been in the field of medicine for decades. He used to do work, and probably still does, with psychedelics, in a clinical setting, of course, and whatnot, looking into research about holistic health in general. He made one comment once that really stuck with me. We all have that potential in the brain, inside the body, to experience these things, to heal, to do all those different things. When we take these substances, all they're doing is activating those areas that are already inside us. And someone might access it through plant medicine. Others might actually be able to induce it through states of meditative trance, or, as you were pointing out, music. Or even dance.
Well, the music goes with my meditation, but dance is another one. I've noticed that since I've been doing the weight training, my mind-body connection has gone up. I do martial arts and I do Pilates, of course, and I have a decent mind-body connection, but it's forced me to use different parts of my brain. The other day I was with my trainer and he's just like, "Isn't this a great session?" I'm like, yeah. But I was so, it wasn't because I wasn't paying attention. In fact, I was very much paying attention. I was so in my body and in the moment. I wasn't thinking about how great the session was. When I got done, like an hour or two later, all of a sudden I just sat there, I'm like, I feel so fucking good. Like I felt it down in my soul. Like, doing afterwards, like those endorphins just kind of like leveled off. Basically, whatever gets you high, man.
Pretty much, right?
Naturally. I want to specify naturally.
Plenty of research to show that even animals do it.
Oh yeah, dolphins chew on the pufferfish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They'll wait for certain berries to ferment. Right.
Monkeys do that, yeah.
We're not unique in this. So, we're all looking for higher states of consciousness.
In Avatar, Jake had every logical reason to just stop right there. And in the Goonies, there was a similar moment where the whole troop was at the bottom of that wishing well. One of the girls, her boyfriend, the Chad upstairs, was going to pull them out. And Mikey had this wonderful speech like he did, and he convinced everyone to stay. And this, like we were talking about that one podcast, is Chester Cobblepot's. Chester Cobblepot's, this experienced dude who is like, this great adventurer of the 19th century in their area. He didn't even make it like nearly as far as they did. And so Mikey said, Chester Cobblepot's, we made it further than Chester Cobblepot's. We got to keep going. And everybody, eventually agreed. There are so many trying tests that come up into our lives that will try to lead us off our path. The most challenging temptations, I think, are those insidious ones. To get our mind to go off and to reason it out. When we're talking about women as Temptress, it's not just the what and the how that these things come up to potentially distract us. It's also when. It's not going to always manifest as like a romantic entanglement, which sometimes that can actually help us stay on our path. It's more beguiling because it comes right after meeting with a goddess. Stage, right after you have that kind of spiritual connection, right after you have that moment of learning and that rationalization, you could still be in that mode of thought thinking, oh, this is just the way the gods are leading me. This is just the way the path is going. I should go off in this direction. We can just kind of reason those things out. Next thing we know, we're not on that path anymore. Now, unfortunately for me, I haven't had to suffer too many female temptations, he says, frowning. My temptations, because again, this is what would affect me, because my mind's, at least for the time that I've been working on my own development, it's around business. It actually kind of makes sense that it wouldn't be like some chick to like, you know, lead me astray and just, oh, I want more time with you. I want to spend more time. What are you thinking about? We don't spend enough time together. You're always working. That wouldn't be as tempting for me, because I could just easily be like, you know what, bitch, fuck off. I don't need that much validation.
I guess what we're trying to say is it's gonna come
It'll come at you. It'll come at you for whatever will screw you up the most.
Yes. Okay, and that's gonna take any form, and it's gonna be very individualized. That's all we want to convey. That's all I want to convey.
I think I made Tom uncomfortable.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm just trying not to lose people right now.
So
we're not as sexist as we said. I promise.
While I was climbing out in Iraq, I had the opportunity to join a network marketing company called Market America. And I didn't do it to make a quick buck like a lot of people do. It's like, oh, I'm going to join this MLM thing. I'll make a lot of money in 6 months and then just sell out before the feds catch me. That's not really, you know, what it is or what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, I'll invest in this company. I'll have a long-term plan. And within less than a year, I bowed out. And not because I didn't have the support. Like I said, I had 2 great mentors. Not because I doubted my ability to succeed. You know, it was a very phone-heavy business, and that's a weakness for me. But I could have overcome it, you know, if I really pushed on it. And it wasn't because the company was bad. You know, one of the highest ratings from the Better Business Bureau of any company in its class. It was because it wasn't my own brand. Pay was good, but for me to focus on actually making money through Market America, I would have had to take time and energy away from what I needed to do. Once I got involved with that company, then I could see it. But it's like Gary Vee says, you have to understand your own personal DNA. Don't do things because I do them or Steve Jobs or Mark Cuban tried it. You need to know your personal brand and stay true to it. I'd rather struggle making money for myself than make a lot of money for someone else. Again, that's me. You know, I think back when I was working at the law firm, I thought, well, this is all I'm going to do. Might as well go become a paralegal. And looking up online business schools to do that. I mean, I just think about that and it makes my chest tighten up. I'm not bashing. I mean, it's a great profession, but it's just not me.
Right.
So if I had stayed in Market America, if I did really, really well, it would still be J.R. Ridinger's face, not mine. If I got on their stage on one of their big, you know, to-do events, it'd be their stage, not mine. That's not about notoriety or, you know, fame or whatever. It's about being able to walk my path. I could have easily rationalized all this, saying that I'm building a future for Fiona and I'm building a future for myself, and then later I'll get to my brand. But now is the time I had to move. Yeah, I could pat myself on the back all I want. It was only when I was writing this that I looked back and realized where it was. It's because I thought something else in my life was actually the temptation that was trying to lead me astray. But I realized, no, it wasn't. It didn't have the same scale, and even though the timing was kind of right. So you're also looking at a what and a when and a where and a how.
Who was Temptress in this for you?
It was Market America itself.
Okay.
I think Market America was the...
So what was it essentially keeping you from doing?
This is for anyone who's ever thinking about joining a network marketing company. Yeah, you make your own hours. Oh, you can work a few hours, 10, but you're not going to get anywhere if you're doing like, you know, 2 hours a week. Mm-hmm. But you have to be willing to put in that time. You have to be willing to put in those hours. You have to be willing to do all that. You have to be willing to dig through your friends list and find that person who's willing to, and then put time in on them and help them grow, just as somebody else helped you grow. So it's a big investment. And I don't want anyone to think network marketing isn't good. It's just, it involves a lot.
Right. That's not even the point. Because I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what is it preventing you from doing? So on a deeper level, like it was keeping you from pursuing your path.
Right.
The path that you intuitively knew was yours. Right. So,
which I had to work up to. I had to work up to realizing that I had a very specific path and a very specific brand that I had to get out of me.
Right.
And so that still took a few iterations before I realized what it was.
Absolutely, and it's a constant process.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to keep evolving. What this was doing, it was essentially, it was providing potential security, right?
Okay, yeah.
It was providing potential security. You know, there was a job.
That's
there
a good
was
way
money.
of putting it, yeah.
but there was a level of comfort there. That was a temptation, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
it was keeping you from building your own brand. So like,
Right.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it wasn't even corporate America itself. It wasn't this company. It was none of those things necessarily, but it was
Right,
the essence
okay.
of what it was.
What it was bringing me was comfort and security and rationalization. Like when I told Dave and Joanne that I was gonna leave, like, and I'm just like, I have to do this. Like I couldn't even fully articulate. That's why this is why you have to talk to people. I couldn't even articulate in those words until you said it. Yeah, so it wasn't the company itself. They were the face on it. Mm-hmm. Just like in a story in a mythology, there's that woman bringing the temptation, or Satan tempting Jesus, or whatever it is. That's the moment of temptation. That's how it manifests. In my journey, it manifests as this really great network marketing company that could have given me, like you said, all the security and the safety of having steady income, and that would exponentially increase.
There's so many people who probably listen in and they're thinking, well, I have this corporate job, but that might not necessarily be a bad thing.
Right.
That might actually be the path that you're on.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
you might need that. You might be a paralegal right now, and that might be the right thing for you. Like Gary Vee says, do you have something in you that wants to do more, that wants to build a better future, and yet you're going home and you're playing Fortnite for 8 hours? You may even be okay with your job, but you're not okay with your life. These are the kinds of questions you need to ask for yourself. And no matter what you're doing, what are you doing in the time you're not doing it?
The job sometimes might be that thing that's keeping you from actually pursuing what it is that you need to. Sometimes it's actually going to be providing you maybe the financial resources to be pursuing what you need to be pursuing on the side. Meaning is something we all want. We want our lives to feel meaningful, and purpose is how we find that meaning. We all have some kind of inner drive, some sort of gift that we have to offer the world. At a very core level, every single individual on this planet is called to action, is called to service. That's going to manifest in a number of ways. And I may have mentioned this on a previous podcast. I'll mention it again because this story always sticks with me. It was JFK who was walking around the White House one time. JFK asking Jenner, so what is it you do? The Jenner responded, I'm helping put a man on the moon.
It wasn't the White House, it was NASA. He spoke with the janitor at NASA.
There you go.
He was doing one of the tours.
That gave his job, right, so much more meaning. We're all called upon to get a little more clear about what it is that we individually have to offer the world, because we all have some sort of inner drive. We do, absolutely, hands down. And life prepares us for this. From the moment we're born up until, the moment you're listening to this podcast.
This is an auspicious event.
There's constantly things that keep building us up, and these things are creating this thing inside us that then needs to be released. Getting clear about what that is for you, and then assessing where you are in your life. Okay, what's preventing me? What's actually providing in your individual circumstances? You had to create this brand that was your own brand. For someone else, maybe they belong to a company, maybe they belong to it, and maybe they get meaning and purpose by actually supporting that, because it's something they fully believe in and can immerse themselves in, and they can go home and feel proud. The term individual means individual. We
are rugged individualists over here.
Understand that we're not even trying to make any absolute judgments on any particular career. It's just giving context.
The reason I really like the fact that we got to talk about how this manifested in my life is it's an unusual manifestation. I think there's a lot of guys out there who are going to think about, that girlfriend. I say it tongue in cheek. You'd be surprised how many people you talk to, and they talk about, where they got screwed up. And it's almost always another person, men and women. Another person came into their life, and it was nothing that the person was doing necessarily that was bad or wrong. It was just the attention they had to give them to make a relationship work, and then the relationship falls apart, and then that person's devastated. It's not letting external circumstances kind of pull you off track, and that's the theme we're going to keep coming back to. But the word I noticed when I was writing this, I kept coming across it, not because I'm a bad writer, but because the word was so perfect, and the word was insidious. You think about a person who's obese, and obese meaning they have a BMI or body mass index of 30 or above. They do not get to that grossly unhealthy point because one day they woke up and said, I'm gonna be a fat fuck. We all said that on Christmas morning. I mean, let's not. I said that this morning when I got up. It's like the third thought that went through my head is, oh, I'm gonna be a fat fuck today. It was not just one sudden decision to blow up to dangerous levels. It was small, seemingly innocuous decisions they made every single day. Oh, one extra treat won't hurt, or I've had a long day, I deserve this cake. I'm gonna break it down for you folks. I'm talking specifically about this subject because food is something that could be abused. And just like alcohol. And I'll tell you, I didn't notice I was scraping towards alcoholism, functioning alcoholism with, oh, I've had a long day, I deserve this drink. Mm-hmm. And the second and third that followed it usually. You don't suddenly just go from being okay and healthy to a stroke and a heart attack. It was all those years in between where you missed out on fun with your friends and your kids. It's not being able to get up a flight of stairs without panting. And that was all created one Twinkie at a time. We flip this the other way. You can make positive, healthy decisions, one positive, healthy decision at a time. You and I were talking on IG, we shared a comment on that post is, how do you move a mountain? One stone at a time. You pick one stone up, you carry it over there. Actually, there was a guy in Pakistan. His wife died because they couldn't get her to medical attention over the mountain. So after she died, in her memory, he dug a path through this mountain range. I mean, it took him like 10 years. Nobody helped him. He did it himself. Bucket after bucket after bucket every single day for 10 years until there was a trail between his village and like the next like actual town. We need you to understand that the things that will screw you up will happen slowly, insidiously, and the things that you can do to fix those problems, to fix yourself, to fix up your life, will have to happen the exact same way. All right, go ahead, make me look good.
I'll share a personal story.
Please.
Because, even the pursuit of something good can actually be detrimental.
Road to hell paved with good intentions?
I also have a tendency towards addiction. I have a tendency towards extremes.
Okay.
And that can manifest itself in any number of ways. In my case, it was, again, centered around food. But in this case, I was obsessing over making sure that I was only giving my body.
You went from one side of the scale to the other.
Absolutely. And guess what? They actually, I believe...
Yeah, the new DSM. DSM-6 came out with that.
Orthorexia is what it's called. This compulsion over
healthy eating.
This was years ago.
This was right after you got clean and made your passport photo look so different.
Yeah.
Love that story.
For me, it was a process of always seeking external validation. Mm-hmm. And for me, that required being the best student. I would drive myself to extremes to make sure that I got those grades. Pushing myself far more than I should have, stressing out far more than I should have. That had its own detrimental effects. And there was an addiction, a compulsion there.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, I see.
Even though it was directed towards
something healthy,
something good and healthy, right? Whether it was, again, the schoolwork,
right.
Whether it was body maintenance. So when I went to the gym, I had to push myself to my limits. If I was consuming food, it became so stressful. I was a guy who would actually avoid going out, who avoided parties, dinners.
Because you couldn't be certain that it wasn't cooked next to something that was cooked in peanut oil.
That was maddening. Meanwhile, I'm also fasting like a nutshell. I would do 36-hour fasts like 3 times a week.
Yeah, because if you feel good after 16 hours, 36 must feel fucking amazing.
You combine all of this, and your kidneys shot. I'm a 6-foot guy. I went from weighing like a good comfortable like 150, 160 down to 116.
Jesus, llama riding Christ.
My skin was yellow.
You're like this handsome, stocky motherfucker. It's like you got like all hunky muscles and shit now. It's really hard to imagine.
There's a sixth sense of satisfaction because you also get this sense of superiority.
As a former vegan, I have no idea what you're talking about.
And that's the insidious part.
Yes.
Right? Because there's all these mechanisms at play
yes.
that you're not aware of that are driving this. But, as shitty as I felt, it also felt good. Like, there was a reason. Like, clearly these practices were serving some part of me.
Well, there's a dopamine hit you were getting to know that you got to this point. They talk about smartphone addiction as like a new buzzword, or, social media addiction. Mm-hmm. It's like a catchphrase that the media likes to throw around. But there really is verifiable evidence that every time that little red flag goes up, that little icon goes up, and you hit it and you get that result. One more meme. One more meme. One more meme.
It's designed for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's designed for. Yeah, so it was the same thing for you to know that, oh, I was able to bench this much, or I've gone this long without eating, or, you know, I had 4 dizzy spells today, and yesterday I had 3, so I'm mostly doing better.
As sick as that sounds,
That's
right?
exactly it.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it can manifest in so many different ways. From that, and I flipped the script. My body completely rebelled against me. When I was at my shittiest, obviously I'm going to doctors, I'm getting all this blood work done. No one can tell me what the fuck is wrong with me. But of course I know what the fuck is wrong.
Right.
I will never forget this. I went to a GI doctor. It's like, oh, well, you just got to get your weight up. So from now on, every single night, I want you to have cheeseburgers and ice cream. Right?
Just get fat. Don't get fat the healthy way with grass-fed beef or something.
A GI doctor, right?
Yeah.
That then really set me on this other path where I had to like really like look deep down, and I'm like, all right, clearly there's a lot of subconscious mechanisms here at play that I need to start addressing.
Is there a sense of feeling really alone at that point?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck do I do now?
And I don't say this with ego at all. I've done over the years so much research, so much reading. The orthorexia stemmed from just like this overconsumption of knowledge, right? Knowing too much. I knew perfectly well. Good microbiome, okay? There's all these little mechanisms at play. It's not calories in, calories out. There's so many other factors here that we need to address. So I'm not going to listen to you. But clearly I knew that my problem wasn't physical. It was far deeper. And the thing is, my body did rebel because then I went on a binge.
It was correcting.
It had to do something, right? So it went to the other extreme. Unconsciously, mindlessly consuming. Maybe a span of 6 months. I went from that like 116 to like 205.
That sounds like Christian Bale. Big shout out to Christian Bale. I love you. Please don't hit me.
Let's see, for him there was purpose. Me, it was mindless.
No, they had a purpose. Your body was trying to fix itself.
It was.
Because it was tired of your bullshit.
Numbing all these feelings by consuming.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I still didn't want to address what's going on inside.
Nobody does. Humans like easy answers. That's why, again, I think that a lot of reason why people try to gloss over this phase or relabel it because they want to make it easy in an analysis. Well, guess what, motherfuckers? This shit ain't easy. All right? This shit ain't simple. And I'm going to quote the illustrious Dr. Jordan Peterson again. Life is complex, and we teach our students that they can just fix it. Go fix a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. You're like a chimp with a wrench. So how do you overcome suffering of life? Be a better person. That's how you do it. But that's hard. You want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters, because that's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters. You're going to have to carry that with you. Life is not simple. When we sat down, you and I decided to do this podcast. If you go online, there's the 12-phase analysis and there's the 17-phase analysis. The first thing we agreed on is we have to go with the 17-phase analysis because there's more nuance. You ever sit and ask yourself, how do these James Bond villains keep finding henchmen? How does Hydra fill its ranks? You know, Hitler had old men and boys like throwing rocks at at Russian tanks, because they were just running out of people and manpower. Where the fuck does Hydra find all these people? It's because people love easy answers. And you have to ask yourself, in literal terms, like Peterson talks a lot about the Soviet Union, the communist camps and the fascist camps and the Gulag Archipelago, and how these people, he was just on Jocko Willink's podcast. Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson were talking about how people are the monsters of history. Just one small compromise at a time led to the greatest atrocities, and each one rationalized away. And I didn't write that in here. I'm glad we got to it. And of course, through the Marvel comic universe is how we ended up getting to this, because it's real. This is exactly what humans do. And it's because we want easy answers, because we want simplicity, because we want to know that we can get our handle on something as complicated as existence itself. And that's why the Woman is Temptress phase is so important to really study and really analyze for yourself. So when you read the Gulag Archipelago, which is very difficult to do, if you want to just find Jordan Peterson's commentary on it, or go find the Jocko Willink podcast. I'll leave a link in the description on the YouTube channel. They're talking about how after Hitler took over Poland, there was a police force in this town. The Nazis, of course, took over, gathered up all the officers. Now you're serving the Nazi Reich. You don't have to feel pressured to do anything you don't want to do. If at any point you're giving an order you don't feel that you can carry out, you have every reason to just walk away and leave. No one's making you stay. By the end of the story, by the end of the book, and this is a true account, these guys were dragging women naked out of their homes and shooting them in the wintry snow. And you ask yourself, how the fuck do you go from being a normal good person like any one of us would be to dragging Jews out of their house and blowing their heads off? It's the same way you go from being a fit child running around your playground to a 350-pound person who's one cheeseburger away from a heart attack. One compromise at a time.
I suggest going on Netflix, called A Special, by Darren Brown, called The Push. It's taking average people through minor compromises. Whole elaborate setup. They have a bunch of actors in on it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically everyone is in on it except for this one individual. Just to give you an idea, there's like platters of like little snacks to be handed out, and one of them was supposed to contain like a vegan option. Like the shipment, quote unquote, never arrived, right? And so this guy that was supposed to be kind of like helping out and like the subject of this whole experiment, the social experiment. Like these little flags were supposed to be like meat. These little flags were supposed to be like green for vegan. Let's just put some of these meat ones here on this platter and just put those flags in, and then and of course, like here you are, like you want to look good because it's a potential business partner that you're trying to collaborate with, and so like it's a very small thing, but then if you do it, guess what? Now you're more likely to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and the whole premise of this experiment is to see if he could get someone to the point where they would, at the end of the night, push someone off a building to their death.
Now I gotta see this.
Okay.
Netflix?
Yes.
Netflix, okay. I
Darren
gotta
Brown.
watch Darren Brown.
And he's got a few other specials out. Another great one that I just watched recently was The Sacrifice, also really great. You were mentioning earlier about generalizations, how we seek these easy answers.
Yes.
And politics is a perfect example of whether you're on the right, whether you're on the left, does not make any difference. There's just like these phrases and memes that we latch onto, and that becomes part of our identity. And it's a simple, easy, quick answer without having to look into the nuances of the situations and the actual details of how all these things, they're not so black and white.
Right.
It's nothing but gray.
Right.
And so Sacrifice was about taking this one individual, anti-immigrant, anti-this, like just very simple, views without actually fully understanding the mechanisms of all of these policies. And can he get this individual to essentially take a bullet for an illegal Mexican immigrant? Can he cultivate the empathy and the compassion necessary to do something like that?
I just realized this podcast took a very dark turn. I'm a pretty good writer. I couldn't write this shit. In the course of our conversation, we're letting one example lead to another, to another, to another. I couldn't illustrate this any better because that's exactly how this goes. So where you are in your life, when you are on your path, you have to really feel these things out. You have to be willing to stand on something and know where you're willing to compromise and where you aren't. Not that you have to go to the extremes, like Tom was talking about. One of the logical fallacies, I think, is almost a logical fallacy of logical fallacies, is the slippery slope argument. Oh, if we legalize marriage, then people are going to be marrying their dogs. You don't go from one to the other. Because there's nothing in between. You would have to do mental gymnastics to talk about legalizing gay marriage and fucking your dog. Like, there's no joining in between unless you're really going to pull this biblical immorality crap.
Right.
The basis of a slippery slope argument is centered in reality. Is that you make a small compromise and then you make another small compromise and another small compromise, and next thing you know, we have this problem. Getting back to simplicity is because there's a good inference to talk about how, if we let this group have this control of our political life, then next thing you know, our country's going to fall apart. Because it's very easy for people using a simple lens, a worldview, to fill in the gaps themselves. They just slot in all those pieces. But at the same time, we've watched it happen. We've watched it happen where the Soviet Union put agents into other countries and slowly chipped away at that country's core, at that country's essence. And they started with education. They put professors in who are corrupting the influence. They put people in to that country's media who are corrupting the influence. And they chipped away at that country piece by piece by piece by piece until they were ready for the Soviet tanks to roll into their street. We look back on that era. We talk about the Red Scare and McCarthyism, and people had a reason to be afraid. But when you oversimplify things, then you take that nuance out, and then people don't get the opportunity to think logically through it. Another word we should probably leave the audience with right now is a term about balance. We're talking about in the last podcast how the feminine, the benevolent side of nature is there to take care of the hero, and the malevolent side of nature is there to tempt the hero. We want to realize that nature itself does not care about you personally. There's no way that you're going to feel comforted in the middle of the woods if you're lost and you have no survival skills. Now, if you have survival skills, you can feel right at home in the middle of nowhere. But if you have no survival skills, it's not going to be a comforting situation. So when we go into life with the skills needed to assess the situations that are coming at us, to assess our place in the environment, to know that there's a balance, to know that there's raw materials everywhere, you just have to know how to extract them. As we're going through in our own journey, we have to know it's all those little steps that we have to take that can either lead us off track or that can continue to help us move forward. We just have to start learning to recognize them. And as we move on in this podcast, as we move on in this series, we're going to start taking that nuance apart. As we get to the next round through the cycle, we have to start talking more about the characters and the symbols, which we've all kind of glossed over so far in this series. Really start doing some more research on your own, looking for the reflections of that temptation in your own life. And again, realizing where and when and how it could possibly manifest is going to be the greatest aid you could have on your journey.
In order to be able to notice the benevolence and the malevolence, you have to become more aware. And the only way you do that is by continually developing yourself as an individual, diving in deep, not being scared to do so, collecting these tools and these practices, whatever that might be for you. Maybe for some it might in fact be psychedelics.
No judgment here.
Or meditative practice, or whatever the case is.
And I honestly don't believe anything is going to stop a person who does have that awareness. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be simple. But that's kind of the point. Life is this grand adventure. You want to end up doing more than surviving. You want to be thriving. You want to be really fully engaged. And the moments that are going to be most significant sometimes will seem so utterly banal.
Yeah. And you know what? Embrace them. Because you cannot appreciate the good without actually facing and going through the bad.
Sounds so cliche.
Life is quite literally a trial by fire in the best way possible.
I think we basically covered as much of that as we can without starting a whole new round. So I want to say thank you to everyone for listening in. A shout out to our sponsor, the Phi Center. That's PHICENTER.NYC. Another shout out to James Morano at jamesmorano.com for editing this podcast, making it sound good.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.